cold January morning in 1492, a king rode out of the most beautiful palace in the world and handed away his kingdom. For almost 800 years, Muslim Spain had been a land of poetry, of gardens, and of golden cities that dazzled all of Europe. Now its last ruler, a young man named Boabdil, placed the keys of the city into the hands of two Christian monarchs and turned away forever. As he climbed the mountain road into exile, he stopped, looked back at his lost paradise, and wept. His own mother stared at him and said the words that would haunt him for the rest of his life. This is the story of the losing side. It had begun in the year 711, when armies from North Africa crossed the narrow strait into Spain. In a single astonishing campaign, they swept away the old Christian kingdom of the Visigoths and conquered almost the entire peninsula. They called their new land al-Andalus, and over the centuries they made it the jewel of the Western world. While much of Europe sank into the Dark Ages, the cities of al-Andalus blazed with light and learning. Its capital, Cordoba, grew into the greatest city in Europe, with paved streets, running water, and public baths. It held a library of hundreds of thousands of books at a time when a great Christian monastery counted its volumes in the dozens. Scholars came from across the known world to study medicine, mathematics, and the wisdom of the ancient Greeks. Muslims, Christians, and Jews lived side by side in its cities, trading, building, and writing under the same sky. Its palaces were ringed with fountains and orange groves, and its poets sang of love beneath the Andalusian moon. For a golden age, Al-Andalus was the richest, most learned, and most envied land in all of Europe. But no golden age lasts forever, and the seeds of its ruin were already growing in the north. In the cold mountains of the north, a handful of small Christian kingdoms had survived the great conquest. For centuries, they were weak and divided, clinging to the edges of the peninsula, dreaming of the land they had lost. They called their dream the Reconquista, the slow, holy war to take back all of Spain for the cross. Then, around the year 1031, catastrophe struck Al-Andalus from within. The mighty Caliphate of Cordoba tore itself apart in civil war and shattered into dozens of small, quarreling kingdoms. These little kingdoms, the taifas, were rich but weak, and they spent their gold fighting one another. Sensing the weakness, the Christian kings of the north began to push southward, year after year. In 85, the great city of Toledo, an ancient heart of Spain, fell to the Christian armies. In their terror, the divided Muslims called for help from fierce warriors across the sea in Africa. The warriors came, and they saved Al-Andalus for a time. But they could not stop the rising tide forever. For over a century, the two faiths fought back and forth across the dry plains of Spain. Then, in the year 1212, the Christian kingdoms set aside their quarrels and united for one great campaign. On the field of Las Navas de Tolosa, a vast Christian army shattered the main Muslim host in a single day. It was the turning point of the whole long war. And after it, Al-Andalus could no longer defend itself. Now the great cities began to fall one after another, like dominoes across the south. Cordoba, the old jewel of the West, fell to the Christians in 1236. Its great mosque turned into a church. Valencia fell, and then in 1248, the rich city of Seville was lost as well. City by city, the 800-year-old world of al-Andalus was being swallowed from the north. Mosques became cathedrals, Arabic gave way to Castilian, and the call to prayer fell silent in town after town. Within a few short decades, almost all of Muslim Spain had vanished into the growing Christian kingdoms. Only one corner of the old paradise still survived, pressed against the southern mountains and the sea. There, in the shadow of the snow-capped peaks, stood the last Muslim kingdom in Spain, Granada. If the fall of a lost world moves you, take 1 second to subscribe. Now, back to the last kingdom. For 2.5 centuries, the Emirate of Granada clung to life in the far south of Spain. It survived not by its armies, but by its cunning, paying tribute in gold to the Christian kings to be left in peace. Behind its mountains, Granada became a glittering refuge for everything that was left of al-Andalus. Refugees, scholars and artists crowded into the city, and it bloomed one last time in beauty. On a hill above the city, its rulers raised the most exquisite palace in the medieval world, the Alhambra. Its halls were a dream of carved stone and tile, of fountains, courtyards and pools that mirrored the sky. Arabic poetry was carved into its very walls, whispering that there was no victor but God. For a while, Granada lived in a fragile golden peace, a last paradise surrounded by enemies. But its survival had always depended on its great enemy, Castile, being too divided to finish the job. And far to the north, that was about to change in the most dangerous way imaginable. 2 crowns and 2 of the most determined rulers in all of history were about to become one. In 1469, Isabella of Castile married Ferdinand of Aragon, and their wedding united the 2 greatest kingdoms of Spain. Together, the Catholic monarchs forged a single powerful state with one burning ambition. They were determined to complete the Reconquista and erase the last Muslim kingdom from Spanish soil. In 1482, after centuries of uneasy peace, the final war for Granada began. This time the Christians came with cannons, the thundering new weapons that could break any wall. And worst of all, Granada chose this moment to tear itself apart from the inside. Within the Alhambra, the royal family fell into a bitter and bloody civil war. The young Prince Boabdil rose in revolt against his own father, the old Sultan, and seized the throne. While the Christians advanced, the Muslims of Granada fought one another for the right to rule the dying kingdom. Early in the war, Boabdil rode out to win glory and was captured by the Christians in battle. Ferdinand saw his chance and set the young king free on a single cruel condition. Boabdil would be released only as a vassal, a puppet sworn to serve the very enemies destroying his land. So the last king of Granada returned home, bound by an oath that doomed his own people. Year after year, the Christian armies tightened their grip, taking the towns and fortresses around the capital. Malaga, Ronda, and the great strongholds of the kingdom fell one by one to Ferdinand's guns. Those who resisted were sold into slavery, and the proud cities of the south were emptied of their people. With each town that fell, the kingdom of Granada shrank, until only the capital itself remained. By 1491, the Christian army marched up the valley and surrounded the city of Granada at last. They built an entire stone town facing the walls, a sign that they would never leave until the end. Inside, the people starved through a long, bitter winter, divided between those who would fight and those who would surrender. Boabdil knew that no help would come, not from Africa, not from anywhere in the Muslim world. And so, to spare his people a final massacre, the last sultan chose to negotiate the end. In secret, Boabdil agreed to surrender the city in exchange for the lives and freedom of its people. The terms were generous on paper. The Muslims could keep their faith, their language, and their property. On the 2nd of January 1492, the gates of Granada were opened to the Catholic monarchs. Boabdil rode out to meet Ferdinand and Isabella and placed the keys of the city into their hands. "Take them," he said, "for these are the keys of paradise, and surrender the last realm of al-Andalus." The great silver cross of the Christians was raised over the highest tower of the Alhambra. After 781 years, the Muslim kingdom in Spain had ceased to exist. As Boabdil rode up into the mountains of exile, he turned for one last look at the city he had lost. Gazing back at the Alhambra shining in the winter sun, the last king of Granada broke down and wept. And his mother, watching him, said coldly, "Weep like a woman for the city you could not defend like a man." The place where he stopped to weep is still remembered today as the last sigh of the Moor. In that same year of 1492, Ferdinand and Isabella sent a sailor named Columbus west across the ocean. The fall of Granada had freed Spain to turn outward, and a new empire was about to be born on its ruins. But the promises made to the Muslims of Granada were soon broken, and they were forced to convert or flee. The poetry, the learning, and the tolerance of al-Andalus faded into memory, mourned in song for centuries. Yet the Alhambra still stands above Granada, perfect and silent, a paradise that outlived the kingdom that built it. This has been the story of the losing side.